My name is Serhi Shiko. You can follow me on GitHub and on Twitter, but I don't tweet anything, so there is and this is Bot Framework and LUIS BFF. Today we are going to create our new bot in Typescript. So it's going to be a bit different than the previous session. We're going to add LUIS to it in order for bot to understand what the hell we actually saying to him. And after this, we are going to deploy it to Azure, create everything we need for it to work. We're going after this try to run LUIS in Docker, because everybody loves Docker, and I think it's the right way to do it. So let's start. And in the beginning, let's talk about bots. So what are bots? Bots are just the same applications that you use on your mobile phones or when you're browsing. The only difference is that everything you do is text, everything you say is text, maybe you use some pictures or buttons, but the main idea is just text-based applications. You can think about bots basically the same thing that you think about menus, or command lines, or web browsers, or whatever. So let's, for example, take command line. It's very similar to bots in a matter because you just type string. But the problem, so you just say what to do to command line. But there is one tricky thing about this. You need to tell command line in exact language that command line understands. By the way, I'm going to delete all your files if you make a mistake. So command lines are great, but only for a specific set of people. Probably for all of you guys, command line is great, yeah, command line. But for common people, command line is terrible. So you cannot use command line for normal people. Then we got menus. Menus are great. You have all these great options. You can select whatever you want. But so many options. And by the way, we have options for your options, so it's also great. But there are also a couple of problems with menus. I mean, it's great for analysis. You can find everything we want. But the problem is that it's hard to find them. I mean, you can make it easier with search and whatever, but it doesn't work for everyone again. And of course, there are websites. Websites are great. You just can't find information that you need there. You can try. You can look for it, look for it, and probably somewhere, sometime, you're going to find it. Probably. So that's how we came to bots. Bots are simple. Bots are easy to understand. Bots are similar to human in some weird way. So in order to work with bots, bots need to understand what people actually talking to them. That's why we need to use some kind of natural language understanding. And here is where LUIS comes in place. LUIS is language understanding intelligence system or service. So it helps you to understand what actually users wrote into your system. And the way you can understand is you have different parameters to your sentences. For example, you can understand the intent of the person, what the person wanted to say to you with this sentence. You can understand entities, what person, what entities he used in this sentence. So let's, for example, use this example. So tell John that I'm doing a great job. Am I doing a great job? I don't know, but I'm going to tell John that I do. So here we see a couple of things. The intent of this is that we need to send a message. And we have a couple of entities where John is a guy that I need to send the message. And I'm doing a great job with the message itself. And here we can see that we can basically just use some kind of a method in order to send this, like send message, and we're passing John as a receiver, and I'm doing a great job as a message. But at the same time, we could have received some other sentence, like for example, send text to John. Here we have a receiver, but we don't have a message. So in this case, in our bot, we would need to ask for a message, because we have a receiver, we don't have a message. And another use case, same stuff, send message saying I'm doing a great job. To who? We don't know. In this case, we would need to ask our bot to specify actually a receiver. And of course, some great user for sure will just print this, send a message. So we need to handle this case too. So basically, that's all for theory. So let's go to the demo. So in order to start with our demo, we need a couple of things. So all of these are actually CLI tools that Microsoft wrote for you to make your life easier. And we're going to use all of them. I mean, almost all of them. So in order to start, let's actually install them. So I already installed all of them. You need to install Azure CLI to create resources. You need to install Yeoman to generate your bot. And you need actually install bot builder Yeoman generation in order to generate bot with Yeoman. So let's start. It's probably too small, but it should be fine. So now let's create our bot. All we need to do is write, and by the way, all this is installed via NPM, so for guys who work with Node.js, it's no-brainer. So let's go yo. Yo. Let's just print yo because they don't know bot builder probably. Yeah. So you're gonna help us to find a proper generator for this. We're gonna use bot builder generator, and here will ask us a couple of questions. Like, what do you want to name your bot? And I will use the name that actually works because I tried it before. This is how we will name our bot. It's AI, boot camp, and new, and then bot, but it's only B, so it's bot. Everything else, and we're going to use Typescript, not JavaScript, because TypeScript is great. Static typing for the win, so TypeScript. And we will use basic bot. And what it actually will do, it will create everything we need. It will create package JSON with all the dependencies we need. It will create package log file with resolutions for the dependencies. It will create .bot file that we manually created in session before. It will create all the code. It will create all the connections to LUIS. It will create basically everything. We just need to supply it with proper credentials and stuff, and it will work out as it wants. And it's a very nice place to start because guys who work on bots, on bot framework, are actually maintaining all of this. So even has almost new as TypeScript in it. It's 3.14 or whatever. So it's a very good place to start. And yes, it's going to create our bot, and here it's installing all the dependencies. We are in npm install. After this, it's going to run npm build, and after this, in theory, we can start our bot with npm start, but it will not work, and it will not work because we need to provide proper LUIS, authoring key and endpoint key and endpoint URL, everything that we need to work with LUIS. But we will not do it manually. Lucky for us, guys at Bot Framework team created everything we need to create every resource you need at Azure with one line. So we will do just this. So in order to do this, we need to run this command. And we need to, I created the project, I didn't go into the project still. So it's, so let's try again. So here we can see what actually is happening, and I will press enter because it's going to take a long time. And it says that there is a bot file that we need to remove because it's an empty template file that you can change manually, but we're not going to do it. So we'll just remove it. And try again. Yes. And here we see all the resources that will be created. I'll just print yes and start deploying because it's going to take a lot of time. So it will create Azure Upstate 1 because it's going to be deployed on Azure App Service. It will create Azure Web App Service, Azure LUIS Cognitive Service, Azure Bot Service Registration, and Azure Blob Storage Service. You might think, why do we need Azure Blob Storage Service? This will be used in order to store our state for each conversation. Because the thing is, you can have multiple nodes running the same code, and you need somehow to synchronize between nodes with the state of conversation. Because, for example, you want to deploy this in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, every node can be destroyed and recreated in any point of time. If you don't persist your state, you will have no state. So we use Azure Blob Storage Service in order to save our state. And while it's creating, let's actually have a look at the code, because we've done everything. We created a bot. We didn't have even a small look at our code. So let's go to this AI boot, and open Visual Studio Code. So here we got our project. And when we started our deployment, we actually started our deployment with this small recipe for deployment. And here we can see all the resources that will be created. So this is the way you specify your resources to be created. And also we see this big LUIS configuration file. If you were on previous sessions about LUIS, you already saw this. So there are a bunch of different utterances with entities, with everything written here. But the problem with this is that it's not very user-friendly. It's hard to write this stuff because it's intended to be used by a machine. It's not intended to be written by a developer. So in order to write this stuff more easily, you can write it in .lu files. And this is how they look. I mean, it's easier, right? And here, the name of the file is basically the intent of the file. All these utterances will have the same intent to cancel, and here how we specify our cancel intent. For example, for greetings, same stuff. We have a greeting. We specify all the greetings that are possible, and we specify even some utterances with entities inside of them. And here we have how we can specify a simple entity, for example, username. So anything that LUIS will see, like call me Kevin or whatever, it will understand that it's a greeting with a Kevin as a username entity inside of this utterance. And the same stuff we can do with patterns. So here we can see that some people call me Kevin, for example, or some people call me awesome. So awesome will be our pattern in there. And in order to convert this LU files to .json files, all you need to do is just run one of the tools that we were talking about before on a previous slide, and it's LU down, and it converts this LU files into JSON files that are actually going to be used in LUIS after for the training. So now let's actually have a look at LUIS configuration that was created for me. So this one was like a demo before this. So this is the new configuration. Yeah, so this is better. So we can see that it has everything created inside. It has all the intents like cancel, greeting, help, and none. And non-intent is very important. Always specify your non-intent, because if you don't have a non-intent, LUIS will try to fit every utterance to your like other intents. For example, if I don't have a non-intent and I will say something like, I want to buy a cookie, LUIS will try to fit non-intent, I want to buy a cookie, in one of these intents. So, for example, LUIS might say that it's a greeting, and obviously I want to buy a cookie is not a greeting. So we can see here inside like all the utterances that were specified in our JSON file. And while we were speaking, it actually created almost all the resources we need in Azure. So we can go to Azure, find our newly created resource group, and as you can see, version. And after this, you will need a trained model from LUIS website in order to work with LUIS in containers. So you need to download a trained model. For this, you need to go to your applications, find your trained application in LUIS, export it as LUIS model for a container, get this container file, copy it somewhere where you want to run this container. I will just run it in the same directory. So I will just pass it here. So here we have this JZip file. You can unarchive it, but you will not be able to read it because it's like almost a binary format. So after this, all you need to do is just execute docker run with a bunch of configuration parameters, and we'll discuss what these parameters actually do. So here we go. So it has a bunch of parameters here, and I will just press enter, and then after the stop in order to change some of it because it needs to be changed. So we just need to write docker run. Then we'll add -rm, and it will tell the Docker container to remove container instance after the container is stopped. You don't want to forget about this parameter, because if you like run it often you'll just have a bunch of local storage memory gone because containers are still not running, but they still persist in your hard drive if you don't remove them after stopping. Then it says that it will pass our input output channel into console. Then we say that we want to bind port 5000 to port 5000 inside the container. Then we tell that we want to allocate to this exact container 4 gigabytes of RAM, 2 cores of CPU, and then we need to mount our input and output mounts into container. And here the input should go to the directory where you have your pre-trained model downloaded from LUIS stored. So I will do just that. So I need to change the path for it, and it's going to be AI boot camp movie. And the same goes to output mount, and output mount is actually a place where LUIS container will write the logs of your LUIS interactions. Because in LUIS you can actually train on every interaction that goes into LUIS. For example, if I say my name is Kevin and this data is sent to LUIS, LUIS can train on this data afterwards to improve itself. And because container doesn't send anything to Microsoft, it needs to store a log somewhere that you will be able to import back to LUIS in order to improve your model on actual usage of LUIS. So here I will say that it's the same folder that it was before. And now it's just saying which container, which Docker image is used. It's the same that we did before. Then, of course, we need to accept all the licenses that you need to accept in order to work with this in production environment. And you need to pass a billing URL and an API key. API key, and we need actually to change this. API key is the same key that we assigned just before in our LUIS portal. So if we have a look here in our application, in manage, in keys and endpoints, we will find this key here. And an endpoint is basically where your LUIS was deployed, because it's a different billing for less US region, or North Europe region, or whatever region you want. Basically, with different regions, you can find a different pricing model for LUIS. And in this case, you can cheat a little bit, because you don't need to specify like real region where your containers run, because you can just specify a different region, for example Australia or whatever, and it will be a bit cheaper. But I mean, it's a bit cheating, but not cheating, because they don't have this in EULA, so whatever. And just enter. So here we see that it actually started a server. So we can go in our browser and see what is going on. We see your Azure Container Service, Azure Cognitive Service container is up. We can go and have a look at the Swagger API description, and we can actually even try here if we want with the same app ID. So an app ID here is going to be the same unique identifier as it was for your application in LUIS. It's the same as with your name of this pre-trained model. without this production or version text at the end. So let's try it. Let's press try it out. Let's put here our app ID and query colony head. And let's execute. And here we can see that it says that intent is greeting, Kevin is the username, and also Kevin is username pattern any because it can be also a pattern. And in order to change it for our bot, all we need to do is go to our bot, find here LUIS endpoint, and change this to HTTP, localhost 5000, and that's it, and it will work. So basically that's it. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them. If you don't, you managed to stay all the day.
You mentioned that LUIS can use the data that was sent to the container for retraining or for training the model.
Yeah.
That's correct. So does that require human labeling for the data, for example?
No. So what you will see is actually, so here we have a log for all requests that were made. And here you can see query response, UTF timestamp. It's actually what our Docker container just wrote as a log. And all you need to do is just upload this log into LUIS UI and it will retrain.
So if, for example, let's say you mentioned some statements that can be used for greeting. If I said something that was not in that list, will LUIS add this to the list of greetings automatically, or I need to tell them that this?
Yeah, so in this case you can just, it will, in this case it will use a bit of manual labor. If you see that it's not the correct greeting, you can just add it to none or to other intents, and it will improve in this way. But it will improve actually, like basically just showing in the same logs output. So you can do it manually if you want better results. Of course, manual labor will always give you better results, but in general case, it's just showing the same file back to LUIS.
Okay, so you can use these to
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's fine, everyone.